The following is a GoPowercat.com production.
With the ever-changing world of college athletics, nobody's ever taken a second to think of it this way. We think of, the ACC, falling apart and, the SEC and Big Ten merging. Well, what happens if the SEC and the Big Ten come after the Big 12? That and a little bit more today on the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big Synergy financial partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hello, welcome to the Big 12 Insiders. This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, with Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowercat.com. Today, we are discussing, Fitz, a little bit about what happens if this whole SEC Big Ten merger, if they decide, let's go after some Big 12 teams. They can improve our brand and can improve what we're trying to do. So we'll discuss all of that. First things first, though, little topic. Just everybody remember, always comment, like, subscribe. It always helps us out. And remember, we've got the new channel that has opened up on YouTube, Big 12 Insiders. Please go subscribe. It's a race to get to 1,000 subscribers. So want to get there as fast as we possibly can. And the quicker we get there, the quicker we move everything over to that channel. So, but in the meantime, continue to subscribe to this channel. So a bit, I was thinking about this and we were talking about coming up with some stuff. And, I think it's an avenue that maybe some Big 12 fans may want to talk about, because we always talk, and I guess it's kind of leaning that way, that the Big 12 is going to just be around. And they're on solid ground, and it's the ACC that's going to fall apart. The Pac-12 did fall apart. But what happens if the Big Ten and the SEC say, you know what? I think we can go get an Oklahoma State or a TCU or a Kansas State. And the Big Ten, they come after a Kansas or an Arizona or Utah. What happens if that? Can the Big 12 survive, Fitz?
No, I don't think so. And that's the underlying question here, is how far do the Big Ten and SEC want to go with this? I know they're eyeing the ACC. There's some great brands there. There's some great schools that fit the profiles of both conferences. And that's the same for the Big 12. If the ACC comes apart, I can see, a good 10 to 12 schools having landing spots.
Right.
But once the Big 10 and SEC get to 20 or 22 schools, is that enough for them? Or do they say, we're not quite complete? We've got a hole in the Midwest, and, the Big 10, I think, would certainly consider Iowa State and Kansas out of this conference because they are AAU institutions. And then, of course, Colorado and Utah will be in this conference, also AAU institutions. I'm not sure where they end with this. Do they see value in adding a Texas Tech to the SEC, an Oklahoma State or a Kansas State? I don't know. Does the value matter at that point? Because the whole mathematics is changing as we find out that the college football playoff payout is going to be heavily weighted towards the Big Ten and SEC if they get their way. That's a whole nother topic we can get into. But does it matter if they then can lay claim to the other portion, the basically third that was going to go to the the Big 12 and ACC? That TV ratings don't matter that much. They can bring on some schools that don't raise the overall profile of the conference. I don't know what their stopping point is. If they're going to 28 or 32, the Big 12 will be decimated. A lot of schools will have homes, but college football will never be the same.
Well, and that's going to kind of be my next question is, obviously college football is what is in the driver's seat and driving all of this change. Does Brett Yormark then say, okay, that's a possibility that's out there, and we've got to make it a real thing that can happen per se? Does he say, you know what? We've got to decide that we've got to put basketball at the forefront of all of this thing and say, you know what? Forget what the Big Ten and the SEC are talking about there. This is a basketball conference first. You're a basketball school. You're a basketball brand. We need you, and you can lead the charge. Would that be the play?
I think so. I think it's the strongest play for the Big 12 is to embrace the fact that you are the best basketball conference and
Yeah,
adding Arizona.
right.
And I'm now really, after seeing this nonsense of the college football playoff, I'm not sure what adding a Pitt does for the conference overall, but a UConn raises the
Mhm.
value of that basketball. And again, we've talked about this. The Big 12 can leverage basketball to try to even out the numbers. One of the things I found interesting about the reporting about how they want to divide up the revenue is Brett Yormark said we need to have another negotiating window if there's further realignment. In other words, uh, you guys, if the ACC is destroyed, what happens to that money? I don't trust you guys not just to take it all for yourself.
Right.
um, I I also think he wants to keep these numbers in balance enough where he can close some of this gap with basketball. Because I'm telling you, Brian, people are really misreading this situation. I know basketball hasn't been valuable in the past, but Brett Yormark is not doing this out of gut instinct. He
Sure.
talked to people, and he knows the value of Big 12 basketball, particularly if it's built out. And I think it's a substantial number that will help close the gap in a way that adding football schools just can't get there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Is like you got to utilize basketball. Look, the NCAA tournament isn't one of the most popular sporting events in the country every year for no reason. That's the first thing. I go, people are tuned in, people are watching. So people will watch college basketball if you make it a priority.
Yeah.
The timing of it is a little off. I agree. I know that's one of the things that you talk about with basketball is it starts too early because let's just be honest, when basketball starts, it's right in the thick of college football season and pro football, and nobody is paying attention.
Yeah.
Nobody's watching those early games. I mean, they do a really good job, Fitz, of kind of trying to schedule some of those, Thanksgiving tournaments and early season tournaments during the week and around college football. I go, but for the most part, people just aren't watching. They're in tuned to football. So, having said all of that, basketball it can be a real thing. And if the Big 12 decides to lean into it, which I'm pretty sure that they have, you mentioning UConn, I think is outstanding because then again, you're just saying, hey, we give, you guys win. You've got the football stuff, even though I would still push back and just say both of them are extremely top heavy, but it is what it is at
Yeah,
this
I agree.
point. You give, we give, you guys win. But basketball, we're not giving an inch. Matter of fact, we're going to take some back. So we were going to lean into this and we're going to go grab and just go out there and be players in this thing. Just come at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 needs to work on preserving the NCAA or an overall governing body. If the Big Ten and SEC want to go do their own thing and break away, then they need to assert themselves. Say, well, you're breaking away in everything. Um,
Yes.
but you've got to make this basketball so vital to this conference that a Kansas or an Arizona or Baylor won't want to leave. And
Right.
maybe, other schools too, as, we see the profile of Iowa State and Kansas State and other programs rise. It will be intriguing to see how Brett Yormark plays his cards. He's not just going along to get along. Everything's measured with him and everything's done based on research and conversations he's had with people who he admits are smarter at things than he is. So trying to play defense with the little offense isn't a bad idea
Right.
and continue to expand that basketball thing. But I think he wants to make it clear that the Big 12 intends on playing these teams on the field, and they're the ones who are going to have to make the choice to end that if the Big 12 isn't going to be in that division. This is
Yes.
such a mess. It's all about greed. And, conference realignment is one aspect of it. And I've kind of grown to understand what's going on with that. But now this whole college football playoff money grab will absolutely disrupt everything we know about college athletics from top to bottom. And as
Right.
soon as those athletes become employees, goodbye a lot of sports. They just won't see a value of sponsoring those sports because it's become all about money.
Yeah. All about money. And then it'll be all about just those few sports will take away a lot of opportunities, should we say, for a lot of student athletes out there to be able to compete at a different level. Because we'll see some of these, especially in the lower small school Division I, Division II, athletics will just go away at that point, just altogether, which will be sad and ridiculous. Bringing it back to what the Big 12 should do. And I've had a lot of time to kind of think about what the Big 12 should do. I think they should just, again, we're talking about basketball and going at it that way, and clearly they would need to do that. But is there any fight in football? Do they have any fight left in football? I know just a minute ago I said, hey, we give, but is the Big 12 trying to fight back at all and say we are a player in this thing, even just a little bit?
We talked about this on one of our PowerCat podcasts this week. It's really incumbent on the Big 12. You've got a 2-year window here. You're going to get 2 or 3 teams into a 12-team playoff here for a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
Win.
Yeah.
Not the whole thing. I just don't think that's tangible. There's no program unless someone, again, this is the benefit of a 12-team playoff. Someone stuns Georgia,
Right.
in an early game, and they don't get 2 games. They have to win 3 to get to the championship or win the championship. If you're a Big 12 team and you get that bye and you're going to play a team coming in after playing a first-round game, you got to win.
Yeah.
If you're a team that is playing in the first round because you didn't have a bye and you're playing another team without a bye, you got to win. It's really important for the conference to perform on the field because you nailed it earlier. The only separation of football is at the very top.
Yep.
The rest of the conferences are very comparable. And I would hope that the Big 12 will work on a lot of non-conference scheduling with the Big 10 and SEC and start picking off wins in the non-conference to start showing numbers.
Yeah, that would be the key. I mean, again, you said it best when you said they got to win. And because as much as we love our brothers in TCU going and losing the way that they lost a couple years ago in the title game, it would have been better if they just got beat by Michigan. Then you go and you upset Michigan, and then you go and get your head beaten in by Georgia, and then the whole perception of the entire conference is, oh my goodness, these guys can't play a lick, which we all know isn't true, but that's perception is reality. So kind of is what it is there. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back on the other side of this and continue our discussion on what will happen if the Big 10 and the SEC decide they want to try to pick off Big 12 schools. One word from our sponsor here with Synergy Financial Partners.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. Again, this is Brien Hanley with Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowercat. So Fitz, I want to kind of get to some of these questions. We've got plenty of questions over here today. And I had one that I thought was good. Big 12 and ACC need to demand 10 spots, double buys, and 20% more revenue in March Madness. Now, that's good in theory. However, the problem comes in is that the NCAA doesn't govern college football. So whatever you're trying to say, and that will be the argument, is, well, you want this for the NCAA tournament. Well, this doesn't have anything to do with the NCAA, the college football playoff. I think that's the pushback. Well, I love this, like I said, in theory, but it's not something that can really happen because that'll be the pushback.
I'm going to ask this question that nobody's asking.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we have a playoff, why doesn't the NCAA run it?
Who knows?
I mean,
who knows?
They run a playoff at every other level.
Yes, for every other sport.
I think it's a legitimate question here, and that's not getting asked. Not that we want to give the NCAA more power. I get the issues with that whole institution. What I find interesting about this comment by G. Brew is I think that's what the Big 10 and SEC want. They want the ACC for now and the Big 10 certainly, or Big 12 certainly, to not go along so that they can say, well, I see this happen in Congress. You put the poison pill in the bill that someone should want, and then they vote against it. You can claim they voted against what they wanted, and then they get blamed for not letting it pass because
Correct.
the name of the bill was the Save America or the Save the NCAA, but really it was just a payout to these two conferences.
Exactly.
They want someone to blame other than themselves for ruining the NCAA football structure, the entire NCAA and how we've known college sports. They don't want that blame. Notice
Correct.
they waited, and I'm talking about the Big 10 now. They waited for the Big 12 to do more damage to the Pac-12, and then they struck and finished them off. But I bet you most people blame the Big 12 for finishing off the Pac-12, not the Big 10.
Right.
But if the Big 10 doesn't come in and get Washington and Oregon, I don't know if it happens. I don't know if the complete collapse happens, but Brett Yormark knew exactly what the Big 10 would do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. Nobody, I think most people that are actually paying attention understood that the Big 12 did not destroy the Pac-12. That it was the Big 10. Yes, exactly. They did it to themselves. It's their own fault. And then when USC and UCLA understood that the Pac-12 literally had horrible leadership and was going to collapse around them, they said, we're out of here. We are getting out of here on the first thing smoking. Do not blame them one bit. But that's the problem. That's what happened. But I get what you're saying, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. They don't want to be the person that gets blamed. But that's kind of the NCAA thing, too. And I know we've talked about it before. The NCAA with the whole NIL and transfer portal thing. They've put this out there and said, figure it out yourselves. And now that they are coming in behind all of this and trying to come in and govern some of it, now you're getting pushback.
Yeah.
And it's like, gee, many Christmas. Every time you look up, somebody's going to court and suing them, and the NCAA now has become powerless. So I think you're right. I think at some point the teams got to band together, or universities, I shouldn't say teams, universities got to band together and say, okay, enough's enough. Let's do some make sense stuff with all of this stuff. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm hoping that the administrators, as much as they mucked up the Pac-12, at some point step in and say, we're still doing the college thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these aren't just going to be employees that play and don't have to get grades, right?
Right.
I mean, we're not having professional football representing our school. These are still students, right? Because that's where we're headed. And I don't hear academic leadership saying that after so much huff and puff from academic leadership from the Pac-12. Now that some of these schools are in the Big 10, they're like, oh, yeah, we can do semi-pro. That sounds good. It just is bizarre to me. I don't even know what we're doing anymore with this. I understand realignment because it consolidates teams and purposes of conferences, maybe not regional as much as we want, but now we're just, dude, I'm just so uncomfortable with a lot of this. And I know that once it goes, college football will never be the same. They're not going to get the ratings they think they will. I have no interest in watching the XFL or the SEC as semi-pro football. I just don't. I'm not interested in it.
Right. Well, the thing about it is because people love their own teams. And I know you've said this in the past. People love their own teams, but they also, I watch SEC football because we're all in the same league together. And what I mean the same league, there's a possibility that we can all play together in a playoff, bowl game, all of that good stuff. But if they separate and go their own way, then you're not going to be playing those teams. So if I'm never going to play them, why do I care to watch?
Right.
That would be the whole thing. Nobody's going to want to do that. And I know people will pound their chest and say, well, it's the best college football out there. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But if I'm never going to participate with you, then why do I care to watch you? And more people are going to do that. And trust me, and just like you said, there's more people around that are going to be on the outside looking in than there are on the inside looking out. And if that's the way that they want to look at this, you're 100% right, Fitz. the ratings aren't going to be what they think they are.
Mhm.
And then the television companies are going to say, hold on a second. You told us this amount of people were going to be watching, and now they're not. And we're stuck paying our advertisers this when we're not getting the feedback. We need to renegotiate.
Right.
And then what happens? I'll be
Yep.
interested. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah. ESPN ain't going to stand for losing money.
No,
I mean, they just can't do it. As we discuss this, Brian, I think it's really important for the Big 12 to assert their authority on the basketball side. They've never had more authority than now because of Houston coming into the conference. Can you imagine how the national media would be spinning KU's issues this season as a complete downfall for the conference if Houston hadn't entered the conversation?
Right.
So as Arizona comes in next year, I think it's really important for this conference to be the leaders to say, a big reason why basketball doesn't have the money value to TV entities, because a whole third of our season overlaps with football, which is more valuable to them. So let's get out of that and let's start basketball January 1. And you know what? If you're going to have 24 teams in your basketball conference, which is where I think this is headed, I think the Big 12 will be 20 and 24 between football and other sports. Why aren't we playing like more conference games? Next year they go to 20, but you could go to 24 conference games in that kind of setting pretty easily with some, KU and K-State would play twice a year, but you play everyone else once a year. When you've got 24 teams in your basketball conference, you don't need to have non-conference games all over the place.
Right.
You're going to be going to some unique places you've never been to or haven't been to very often through the course of the season. And it damages the smaller institutions, but let's just play fewer of those games that people don't really want to watch. And let's get busy putting product on the floor that people do want to watch. It might give the Big 12 more losses, but make that contract as valuable as possible. And they much rather see Iowa State play UConn than either one of them play a Sun Belt team separately.
Correct.
So I'm just in on growing basketball big time.
Absolutely. And to your point, and you just mentioned them, what are the chances of Brett Yormark in the Big 12 just calling UConn and saying, yeah, come on board? I know that it makes it an odd number of teams. I said, but the ACC does that every year. Yep. I go, so it's not that big of a deal. Why? What's the reasoning why they wouldn't just, if we're going basketball and we're solidifying it, why not call UConn and just say, hey, come on board? Even if it was just for basketball. Everything else you can be independent, but for basketball, we want you. Now, I don't think they would do that for just basketball, but for the same point, just call UConn and just have them come 100% on board. Why not just go grab them?
I'm with you. I mean, start working that a little bit. I do think they need to move the schedule so you got more room for games and valuable viewing areas, times of the year. But I can see them stopping on some of these ACC schools and thinking, I know UConn football is not good, but if we're going basketball, I think this UConn's a much bigger get both for men's and women's.
Right.
And I don't know how much women's actually brings to the table, but you start bringing in a UConn, you might actually see revenue on that side as we're seeing that sport grow exponentially now in a way that honestly, I didn't expect. But Caitlin Clark, who I'm not a big fan of, is been Larry Bird. She's Larry Bird to the women's game. And when the college, we all remember Bird and Johnson and Magic for the NBA, but when they hit Michigan State and Indiana State, college basketball took a huge step forward. And now we're seeing that on the women's side.
Right. Well, I mean, still to this day, that game was in 1979, Fitz, and still to this day, it's the highest watched college basketball game of all time.
Yep.
So, I mean, that tells people something. They knew something. They were doing something right. So I get all of that. Let's take one quick break here. Let's take a last break, and then we will come back and we'll hit just a couple of more topics before we wrap the show up. So one more word from our partners with Synergy Financial Partners.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders again. This is Brien Hanley with Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowercat. Before we wrap up, Fitz, the last thing, the Big 12, let's just talk hypotheticals. Let's talk hypotheticals real quick and kind of give some people some understanding on what actually could happen. I shouldn't say should or would, but could happen. If the SEC and the Big Ten do their thing and they say, you know what, we're going to go after certain schools, which schools do you think are the ones that are going to be had or going to be the ones that they would go after the most or most have the most probability for them to go after to try to build their conference in brand?
Well, first of all, let me say, despite all this chest thumping about unity of the Big 12, I'm a realist. If
Right.
the SEC or Big Ten comes a calling and you're willing to pay the price, and the price is probably losing more games, losing your regional ties, losing some of that stuff that might be valuable to you, but most schools are going to go. I mean, let's be blunt. If the Big Ten offers Kansas, Iowa State, Utah, and Colorado, they're gone.
Right.
And nobody can blame them because the money's getting to be such a huge gap. And the same is true probably for, Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, Arizona, maybe K-State's in that mix. K-State might be back in that situation of, do they fit either conference? Academically for the Big Ten snobs? No. Athletically overall, I'm not sure K-State does fit the SEC. And we'll see what they do. Maybe they just want the foot in that market. As huge as Manhattan is. But it will be interesting. There will be offers. One of the other things I've seen is the ACC will want to reconstitute, trying to steal Cincinnati and West Virginia. I don't see them doing that.
Right.
Once the ACC gets rated a little bit, there's going to be nothing to sell. It's going to be
Correct.
You're going to be adding UCF and Tulane. That's just, you're going to steal from the American, the teams that the Big 12 passed on.
Right.
So I'm just, they'll say yes. And that's just a reality. There's almost no way to stop the heathen hordes from invading at that point. You just open up the gates and see what's left at the end and try to reform and whatever's left. And that would be a shame.
Let me ask you this one last question in closing. What are the chances that this goes the other way, Fitz? What are the chances that cooler heads prevail? Now, cooler heads usually don't prevail very often when it comes to money, but what are the chances that cooler heads prevail? Common sense starts to kick in, which this whole thing has lacked common sense for a decade now, at least. But say all of that happens and people put on the brakes and say, you know what? We're ruining college sports as we know it. We're ruining college football, basketball, college athletics. We need to stop and just go to our separate corners, take the standing 8 count, and then come back and talk. Any chance of that happening?
That'd have to be the chancellors and presidents. And by the way, M. Thole points out Iowa State did surrender their AAU status, which, that's interesting. But I don't see it happening because right now I think academic funding is at such a low spot right now. And that's why tuitions are going through the roof, because the states aren't providing the money they used to.
Correct.
But also, let's be honest, salaries on the state side have skyrocketed. So it's making it very difficult to run a balanced budget for a university, almost impossible. But what if we can get our grubby little hands on a sliver of what the athletic side of our institution is bringing in? What if we say, hey, we're going to take 10% of all these revenues. You go do your thing, make our 10% bigger. And they say, we don't care what happens now. We just need the money. That's my fear, is the academic side is going to be eyeing these numbers and wanting their cut. And if they want their cut, they'll get it because the school belongs to the academic people, not the athletic departments, as much as we get it twisted.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time again to talk to us about it, Fitz. I know it's a subject that nobody likes talking about, but I think it's one that we need to discuss because, in this ever-changing world of college athletics, I know I say it over and over again, but it's the truth. You have no idea what's going on and where we're going. So I appreciate it. Yeah,
One more thing. Make sure we've got a lot of people watching right now. Make sure you follow the Big 12 Insiders YouTube channel. Subscribe
Yes.
to that, please. We got to get that to 1,000. We're trying to migrate the show off of the GoPowercat platform, so it doesn't look like a K-State show, because it's not. This is not a K-State show.
Correct.
We might be two K-State dudes, but we love this conference, and we're talking about the conference with 24/7 publishers and doing topical things like this. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe or hit the follow button on the Twitter handle there, Big 12 Insiders. Help us grow, please.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just help us grow. Like I said, Fitzy's right. We're two K-State guys, but this is a Big 12 channel, and that's what we are going to bring you, Big 12 news. So the more you guys, follow, the quicker we can get everything moved over there. Follow, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. The quicker we'll get over there. So we appreciate everybody's support so far. Like I said, we're growing. It's fun. I appreciate Fitz giving me the opportunity in 24/7 sports. So I like this. I like everybody. Continue to come back. We'll come back next week. Again, Tuesday through Friday, 1 p.m. We'll have a little show, a little recap on Monday of what happened this weekend. So please come check us out. You guys have a good one.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on